You know, it's not often I get the chance to talk with creators of an opera, because there aren't that many new operas that are being done, and this is a wonderful one. I'm wondering if you can tell me the story behind The 13th Child. Give us a little backstage tour and your long-standing relationship with Danish composer Poul Ruders.
Well, the relationship dates back about 35 years, and we do a bunch of things with him. He has written me, I'm a guitarist by profession, and he's written me a couple of concertos, and I've conducted a lot of his music over the years. And we also represent his music on a record label that my wife Becky and I operate, called Bridge Records. And Becky is his manager and takes care of a lot of his business, and that's what led to the opera. Becky was doing planning for his commissions over the next coming years, and there was an opening for him to write a piece, a major piece, and she suggested a fairy tale. He looked at Brothers Grimm stories, chose one that he liked, and Becky and I, over the next couple of years, turned out a libretto for him.
Was that the first time that you had written an opera libretto?
Yes.
How did that come to be then? I mean, did you want to do it from the beginning, or it just developed naturally?
Well, Paul started out trying to do it himself and felt that he didn't really have the direction for it. And so we said, why don't we give it a try? And went to work, and he seemed to really like what we were doing.
Well, looking through the libretto, it seems tailor-made for Poul Ruders' musical style. Although I have to say his musical style is a little bit more like folk influence. It's a little bit more open than some of his past operas.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah. In some ways more appealing, I think, to the ear and certainly to radio listeners.
Yeah, he I think, went with us on this. Now, as we were writing, there were all sorts of turns that the story took that could have emphasized either his more abstract side, shall I say, for lack of a better word, his kind of modernistic side. And then there were aspects of it that were much more humanistic and sort of plain spun. And we thought, how is it going to be possible for him to approach this with his sort of modern clothes on? And we knew he couldn't. There were just certain paths that the libretto took that had to lead to an opening of the heart. And I think that's what he did in this piece.
There's some beautifully lyrical pieces within the opera.
Absolutely. I mean, even the opening of the opera sets the tone for what's to come, sort of the open strings and the polytonality in such a way it creates a scene of a fairy tale world in music.
My sons, stroke on your warning chokes me.
Can you talk a little bit about this particular fairy tale? Because it's not one that people know, but they know the Brothers Grimm, but the 12 Princess is not that well known.
Yeah, it is not that well known. It presented us with opportunities to do things that one likes to do in opera, and being able to portray a very strong good character versus a very strong evil force. It gave us the chance to get our feet wet with writing for a character that showed that he was not mentally quite stable, the king, who, you could call him mad, but he's still torn at the beginning between the evil that has been dripped into his mind by his cousin Drocon, the evil force in the opera, and then the wonderful goodness of his wife, who has borne these 12 children and is bearing yet another. And this story was ripe for it. It also has a love interest, and it gave us the opportunity to develop characters that strongly lean toward strong female characters. I think the mother and the princess, the mother, the queen, and the princess, who's the daughter, are by far the focus of the opera, and their journey through the trials and tribulations that they go through is for sure the focal point of the opera.
Yeah, it's very interesting. You know, you can go back and read, let's say, letters between like Giuseppe Verdi and Arrigo Boito, and you can see the collaborative process take shape in history. But here you are, you know, living librettists with us right now, working with a living composer. What was the process like, the give and take? And David, I understand your brother was somewhat influential in this as well.
Well, my brother, Michael Starobin, is a Broadway orchestrator. I would say the influence has been a steady one throughout our growing up together. And then his early work, particularly with Stephen Sondheim on Sunday in the Park with George, and then later with Assassins. My brother was the original Broadway orchestrator for those shows, and he kind of kept me on the inside and allowed me to watch the process. And that was just a good teaching thing for me. And when Becky and I sat down to finally put this libretto together, I think that experience, and also our inexperience and willingness to kind of play around with ideas that really did not have so much of a filter from past work, opened things up for us in a way that we felt really comfortable in working with. Paul was in many ways your ideal collaborator. He took whatever we were doing, asked for a few revisions, but essentially believed in the story that we were telling. And it actually was an incredibly smooth collaboration, especially considering that he was working with novices. This is Paul's fifth opera. So he was the man with real theater experience. And we were kind of beginners who I think gave him something that he really enjoyed working with.
Well, I don't know that I would call you beginners. I mean, you both have peripheral experience that certainly prepared you.
Yeah, and I do film direction on the side. I'm a recordings producer, so a lot of my work is in realizing new projects. And so that gave me an easy entryway into this process. And Becky writes short stories and has real true literary interests that go sort of parallel to mine. And fortunately, we got along really well together and survived the process of finishing the libretto.
Well, that always helps, doesn't it?
Yes.
Now, the performances are still going on, right? You have one more as of the time that we're talking today at Santa Fe Opera.
Yes, the final performance is at Santa Fe Opera tomorrow evening.
How has it been received so far? I mean, Santa Fe is known as a house that programs modern music and modern operas. I imagine the audience has been receptive.
The audiences have been absolutely wonderful, and the show has kind of deepened. We saw the first 4 performances of the run, had to leave before the one that happens tomorrow night. But I think the audiences have been wonderful. Critics are split on it. I would say, realistically speaking, people either loved it or disliked it. So, and that's good. I'm happy for that kind of a reaction. There did not seem to be too many in the middle.
Yeah. Well, at the end, I think the audience opinion probably weighs a little more than the critics.
It did to us.
Now, David, is it correct you're conducting this recording?
Yeah, that's a little bit of a story unto itself. Becky and I arrived for the second act. We recorded orchestra first. We arrived in Denmark to record the second act, and I was the producer. That's the hat I wear in all of this. It's what I wore for the first act. but our conductor had a wife who was just going into labor a little bit too early. We figured we'd get by, and so he flew back to Israel. I jumped in and I conducted the orchestra at the last minute.
That literally at the last minute, we got the call that he was leaving about a half hour before the downbeat of the recording.
You put down your sandwich and ran to the theater, huh?
Yeah, and hoped that I had looked at the score enough to get through the first day. After the first day, I was fine because I got a chance to mark my score like as a conductor would mark a score. The first day was a little touch and go for me.
The house and yours with its new child, and I first to love Rouders' wife.
I wonder if we could talk a little bit about the music itself and the singers that are performing this piece, because some of these roles are extremely demanding and not necessarily what a typical opera singer would assume they were going to be faced with, when they walk into a role. You've got the bass that is singing about as bass as you can imagine, super low notes, and then you have falsetto high notes and a lot of stuff going on. Can you talk a little bit about that vocal style?
Well, Poul, and one of the interesting things about Poul, and I've noticed this about all of his music for as long as I've known it, is that he gravitates toward extremes. And so it works that way with the singers. As you mentioned, the bass, the king, has exceptionally low notes. He's written down to a D or a D flat. And then he also has exceptionally high falsetto notes that he has to sing, and so does his cousin, Drokhan. I'm pretty sure that the composer's intention with this extremely large range was to denote some sort of illness in the men. They're not all there. There's something acting on them that drives them to these absolute extremes of expression, both at the low, deep range and the high range up there. And he uses that, and you actually see it come back in the second act with one of the sons who exhibits the same tendency, and even the daughter at one point who breaks into a higher octave in the middle of a very lyrical passage. And so he used that device rather effectively, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. The character delineation is very ear-catching, I should say. And the choruses are remarkably written as well. A lot of wonderful music to be found in this recording. Now, are there plans for the future for this piece, or anything you can tell us as far as...
Well, it's planned to be done in Denmark in 2021. So we're looking forward to that.
And I mean, to be truthful, we have our biggest plan for this piece is we would love to see it as a full-length animated opera feature. I feel that a lot of the magical elements suit themselves to animation in a way that maybe supersedes live performance. Not sure about that, but we're looking at it as a possibility.
Yeah, it sounds like a wonderful possibility. Well, the 13th Child, that title, by the way, I think is great, coming from the 12 Princes. You're talking about the child that she's pregnant with, right?
That's right, the daughter, Lyra, Princess Lyra.
Yeah. It's a new opera by the Danish composer Poul Ruders. The librettists are Becky and David Starobin, based on a fairy tale by the Brothers Grimm. This new recording out from Bridge Records. Thank you both so much for joining us here on FM 91. Wish you all the best with this new opera.
Thank you, Brad.
Thanks, Brad.